Good morning, friends. Welcome back to another episode of GM Philosophy. I'm the GM Philosopher. The truth is that I hear about more and more players leaving 5e. Is this true? And if so, why is it happening? Stick around. You're not going to want to miss this one. Since I've started this platform back in May of 2024, I've become aware that more and more people seem to be talking about leaving D&D and especially 5e altogether. I have met more people who are into other systems and who actually have rejected 5e than I ever really thought I would. I wouldn't say that the majority of people I meet in this space think that way. My content, after all, is very much geared toward helping game masters to run better games, and I specifically talk about D&D in a lot of my videos because that's what I play. With that being said, a lot of my advice could really apply to any game, any TTRPG game, and anyone running such games. With that being said, I would estimate that about 20% of the people that I meet either on the Discord or just through my email list or even just through the YouTube comments community. By the way, if you want to join my Discord, the link is in the description. But I would say about 20% of the people I meet basically broadcast, mention, make known that they would rather play something other than D&D 5e. The people who think this way don't necessarily seem to reject D&D as a whole. It's really just 5e. For example, I know people who reject 5e and they continue to play 3rd edition, or they continue to play 2nd edition, or they even continue to play 4th edition. It's really, really interesting. There are also gamers who reject 5e for other games like Shadow Dark or even Basic Fantasy. So the first question is there like a mass exodus happening? Are more and more players actually leaving 5e, or is this more like an illusion? So here's my answer to this. As someone who is really plugged into this community in a pretty big way, I will say that I don't see like a mass exodus. I think the majority of people who are into TTRPGs are still lining up for D&D and playing D&D, and they're upgrading to the new version, and they're pretty happy about it. That seems to be the majority of people. Then there's a certain percentage of people, like a medium percentage, who are still sticking with D&D, and they're playing 5th edition, especially 2024, but they are a little disgruntled about it. They're disgruntled for a number of reasons. And some of these reasons are some of the reasons that are driving people away from D&D. So some of the reasons that people are disgruntled with 5e, I think especially the 2024 version, is D&D keeps releasing new editions. There's an argument to be said that the new editions are awesome and that they are an upgrade and it's fun to have new stuff. Then there's the argument that, well, it's just a cash grab. Why don't they just keep building on like 3rd edition? Or why didn't they just keep building on 4th edition? They released so many books for 3rd edition. There's a sustainable growth model in terms of like content where you could think to yourself, why waste the energy and effort to make a whole new system? Why not just build on the system you already have? Bring out new supplements, new materials to make it better. If people weren't super into some elements of 3rd edition, okay, release supplements that kind of help move it in a better direction, but that still work with all the other books. Eventually, you could have hundreds, thousands even of books released for that one system that all work together. And I think that people see that approach as like, that would have been common sense. That would have been very sustainable. That would have been better for the hobby overall. But instead, boom, Wizards of the Coast keeps coming out with new editions of D&D. And when the new editions come out, if you want to play ball, so to speak, you basically have to say, well, it's time to put the old 3rd edition books back on the shelf, break out my wallet and buy all the new stuff, which of course makes Wizards of the Coast money. Now, there's an element of this where I'm sympathetic to Wizards. I love D&D. I think 5e 2024 is the best thing yet. I'm into it. I was not upset to purchase the materials. With that being said, I do see it as a bit of a shame that I have a whole shelf full of 3rd edition books that I can't really use anymore. This doesn't disgruntle me. I'm probably in the percentage of people who are the most happy with 2024, like of anyone. Like I'm in that category. Like I'm the least disgruntled of everyone. Like I'm in that category. But there are a lot of people who are kind of like a little, I think, upset about it. They're like, man, I work hard for this money. I have to buy groceries. I have to pay my mortgage. I have to pay my rent. I have to pay for these crazy high utilities, eggs, A box of eggs now is $28 if you buy like the big box. Like me and my family, we buy the giant boxes of eggs. And literally last time I bought them was $28, used to be $15. So it's like, money don't grow on trees around here. And yet we have 60, 50, $60 paying for the new books, depending on which book it is, whatever. It seems like a lot of money. Feels like a lot of money, especially when we could have just bought a supplement or continued to play third edition with new stuff Wizards is putting out. And I understand it. I think that's one of the reasons people are starting to leave D&D, is just because it's become more of a boutique cash grabby sort of system. I don't think of it that way, but I think that there are people who think of it that way. I personally subscribe to the notion that Wizards is just putting out new stuff. They have a business. They got to pay the bills. They got to pay their designers. And I understand that part of it. And I'm fine to pay for stuff I'm going to use and enjoy. And I do use and enjoy this 2024 stuff. Now, there's another element to this too, which is the online stuff, like D&D Beyond. And I think that a lot of people are getting actually high-key frustrated about that. Let's talk about that for a minute. But just real quick, before we dive into that, I want to let you know the purpose of GM Philosophy is to help game masters run better games. And I've created a brand new ebook to try to help new GMs get started right away on the best foot possible. This ebook is 7 pages long. It's titled Mastering the Game, 10 Essential GM Tips, How to Take Them to the Next Level. If you're interested in hearing what my top 10 GM tips are, well, you can join my email list. Links are in the description. In the first email, you will get that ebook for free. You'll also get my Ultimate Plot Randomizer, which is pretty awesome. If you enjoy running games, you want to get better at it, or you want to check my math and see if my tips are any good, grab those for free. I hope they help you. Anyway, let's talk about D&D Beyond. Now, Wizards of the Coast is obviously moving D&D to the online space, which is awesome for like VTT stuff. However, there are some things about it that I think people are a little disgruntled by. First of all, you do have to buy the digital copies of books and stuff to be able to use the resources on the site, unless you have a friend or your game master has all of them, but someone has to buy them if everyone's going to use them. And then there's also like a subscription model-esque kind of style coming to the platform, especially with the new like 3D tabletop system that they have rolled out. It's called Sigil. Maybe you've heard of it. Now, I have to say, I don't know a whole lot about D&D Beyond. I'll be really honest. I haven't bought a single resource on D&D Beyond. I have only used the free version. The only reason I've made things outside of the stuff you get for free is because in the game that I play in, with my friend William, he's the game master, and he shared the link that allowed me to create a character using like his resources. I don't personally use D&D to run games. I use Owlbear Rodeo. So, D&D Beyond does offer things. It has maps, it has Sigil, and it has the character sheets, and everything can be like put together. And I actually think that's really cool. And in fact, there's a part of me that in the future wants to explore that more. But I think all of this, hey, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, so you can play online, and then like pay every month kind of thing. I think that this model is making D&D players a little nervous. And I think that they're thinking, man, I just don't want to pay this much. I really think that there's a lot of people who feel that way. And I think that that is also causing people to kind of like leave the 5e train. I personally think that D&D is doing really cool things with D&D Beyond. I will also admit, though, one of the reasons I'm running online games the way I'm running them, which is through Owlbear Rodeo instead of through D&D Beyond, is because of the cost factor and purchasing all the stuff. I personally am not a huge stickler right now for having my players create their characters on D&D Beyond. Now, most of my players are creating things on D&D Beyond, but some of them do not. Some of them just use their physical books and they create it, or they can look up the classes online, create it, right? Basically, I make it super easy for my players to be able to jump into a game with me, even with no money needed, because at the very least, they could just get the stuff online, make their paper sheet, and be ready to roll. They can just roll on Owlbear Rodeo, tell me what the modifier is, and boom, we're good to go. This doesn't feel quite as good or as clean as running everything on D&D Beyond would feel. D&D Beyond maps and Sigil look really amazing, though I've never actually used them. And I will admit that rolling on D&D Beyond with your character and having access to your sheet on there is super helpful. Personally, I think Wizards is going in a good direction with it, but I can also see where people, like I said, are getting nervous about all the little costs that add up when we move in that direction. I have to say, I understand. As someone who's trying to run a small business, I also have membership products. I have my Ko-fi community support products, which you can find down in the description. But, the thing about it is that businesses need money to function. And when you add money to a hobby you love, it can kind of feel dirty. D&D not that long ago was a super inexpensive game to play, and it still can be. You can order older used supplements from either second edition, third edition, fourth edition pretty affordably online right now. You could run to your local store and pick up some used books. You might even be able to jump on Craigslist. Is that still a thing? I don't know. Jump on eBay. You can probably get yourself a lot of D&D stuff from older editions very, very cheaply. And even if you don't want to do that, you could probably print stuff out online. With that being said, it's also true that if you want to be on the modern bandwagon, you kind of have to spend a certain amount of money, either online or in person. And this online part, I think, is causing more people than usual to be like, whoa, let's pump the brakes. I don't know that I want to commit to spending money every month on this. But it's also true that there is a technical aspect to 5e that players and game masters are sort of rejecting. It is true, let's just be real here, that for a casual gamer player walking into a game and sitting down and saying, I'd like to play D&D with your group, and then you kind of hand them the book and say, hey, create a character, there's going to be a fairly steep learning curve. Yeah, someone can walk them through it. It's going to take quite a little while in order to understand some of the abilities, the spells, picking out spells. It's not altogether a super simple, super streamlined ordeal, especially at higher levels. If you sit down and create a first level character, okay. But if you sit down and try to create like a 10th, 11th level warlock and try to explain to them how to level your character up and choose their pacts and all of this and that and this and that, and casting spells at the highest level possible, now it is actually fairly complex. It is fairly complicated. And some people are just saying this is too darn complicated. I think there's a segment of people who used to play D&D who now are rejecting D&D 5e just because of the complication. I personally know several people who, for example, they prefer Shadow Dark because of the more streamlined combat. They prefer Basic Fantasy because the rules are just more streamlined. There isn't a lot of complication. You can jump into it and play fairly quickly, fairly easily, and you can get into the role play without all the technical little rules that D&D has. D&D is admittedly rules heavy, especially when it comes to magic and combat. There are people who really like this about it. And to be honest, like, I have good and bad feelings about this. I actually kind of feel like 5e makes it less complex in a way than third edition did. And I came up playing third edition. So to me, I feel like 5e is kind of a step in a better direction than even third edition, where complexity of rules is concerned. But 5e still has very complex rules. And when I bring new players in and try to get them into our game at like level 8, and they say, I want to play a wizard, I just think, okay, well, we have some work to do. We have some serious work to do, because not only do we need to create the character and get them up to speed, but then the player character has to understand how to play that character. And that is a relatively long and involved process if you're starting like at mid levels. If they're starting at level 1, it's not that big of a deal, but that doesn't happen super often. A lot of times you want to bring players in, or you start at higher levels anyway. Long story short, I really feel like these are the reasons why people are rejecting D&D 5e, at least those who are rejecting it. I think these are the reasons why. I see some merit to it. My personal 2 cents on the matter is that I do love 5e. I understand that, we are moving into an age of like monetary inflation. Everything is costing more. I can understand why a hobby like D&D, being run by a company like Wizards of the Coast, needs to earn money. And obviously they're adopting systems to try to deliver a lot of value, especially with like D&D Beyond. They're trying to deliver a lot of value, and they're trying to get paid for their work. They're trying to continue the forward movement of the company, and these recurring kind of income models, which is like releasing new things regularly, selling them, and having people buy subscription based things. These things do really help them to solidify their status as a game maker for the future. And to be honest, the gaming world is better for it, in my opinion. And I think that even though some people maybe can't afford to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, that's kind of a necessary evil of our capitalistic world. And it is what it is. I personally feel like if you can't afford to play D&D, there are a lot of really affordable options, including free. I played for years and years and years, literally with no books, no nothing. No books, dice, make up our own system as we go. Me and my friends did that for years, playing Star Wars, and then we played like samurai warrior type games, and that's just what we did. That's what we did until like we started playing D&D, and we had a really good time. You don't have to spend a penny to play TTRPGs. You do not have to spend a penny. But we are moving into a period of time where materials are getting more expensive. Running companies is getting more and more expensive. People do have to get paid for this. So, I feel like I understand the idea. I understand why some people are rejecting it. I understand why some people may not even be able to play D&D literally because it's cost prohibitive, which is a weird thing to say because it used to be so inexpensive to play D&D. I feel like it's more expensive than ever to play modern D&D. I'm not mad about it though, and it doesn't make me want to leave D&D 5e. If anything, I'm a little even more upset about the complex rules than I am about the money factor, but even that isn't such a big factor for me because I usually tend to play with people who I meet on my Discord who all mostly tend to be game masters who take the game super seriously. Like they get into the rules and know how to run their characters. So that's not even really a big issue for me right now. If I was playing with like brand new players all the time, people who had never played TTRPGs before, and I was bringing them in, and they were like, most of the new players I've played with have been very casual gamers, in the sense that they do not want to take a book home and read it. They want to just show up and play a game for 3 hours and then go home. For those kinds of gamers, I actually don't know that D&D is the best choice, but I do not play with those types of gamers very much these days. And so for me, that's kind of a non-issue, but I could totally see how it could be an issue for some groups. Just one more thing I want to mention. I want to give a big shout out to our Ko-Fi supporters. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, helping us to create content every single day, especially our gold tier members. Craig, who is our newest gold tier member, thank you so much for sponsoring the channel and for supporting all the awesome content that comes out. Also for supporting the Discord and the email list. We have the community, we have the email list, it's awesome. For those of you who are just watching maybe for the first time, you should join our Discord. We have group hangouts going on in there. We do one-shots, we have content creation contests, and we have master classes. Jump into the Discord to learn about all that stuff. That's the next step. If you've never been on Discord before, you should try it. You might actually really like it, and you can even jump in on your phone, and it's not a big deal. But with that being said, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm here every single day creating content about the best game in the world, D&D, helping game masters to run better games. That is our mission. Thank you so much for being here. Roll some D100s for me at your next game. I'll see you awesome people on the next one.